Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to East Central Missouri and the world, and welcome to the James Strong Show podcast number 166. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for making us a part of your day. I appreciate it. This podcast was recorded on the morning of Saturday, April the 4th, from the James Strong Studio in Western St. Charles County. I have a podcast for you today that I'm very excited about, and I think you're going to enjoy it too. And it has absolutely, positively nothing to do with the COVID-19 pandemic. All week long, I've been thinking, I've got to have a podcast that has nothing to do with the pandemic because we're tired of this. It's a way of life for right now. And I wanted to put together a podcast that was 100% escapism, something that has nothing to do with the podcast, or with a podcast that has nothing to do with this dopey pandemic. Something to get our mind off of this for maybe another half hour, 45 minutes to an hour, however long the podcast lasts. Don't know yet. We've just started the podcast. But I'm thinking, well, what has nothing to do with the pandemic? What is the most far from the pandemic topic that we could possibly talk about that would make people smile? Well, if you're anything like me, it's got to have something to do with the paranormal. I've done podcasts on UFOs. I've done podcasts on Bigfoot. I have gone UFO hunting. I have gone Bigfoot hunting. But one topic I've never done a podcast on, nor have I ever personally explored it, are skinwalkers. Skinwalkers, that's right. Shapeshifters, Navajo Ute, legendary skinwalkers from the desert Southwest. I'm going to do a podcast on skinwalkers. It's going to be quite detailed. What are they? What are they all about? And my future plans for personally investigating skinwalkers. We're going to get to that. I mentioned to you first, let me do this. Let me take a sip of my coffee. I'm going to do that. I haven't done that in a while. Here. It's a Colombian blend, freshly ground, with a bit of milk, 100 or a 4% whole milk in the coffee. Now, to those of you who have given me criticism about sipping on the coffee and stopping it because you don't like it, I'm going to ask you a question. In the famous words of Roberta Flack and Donny Hathaway, where is the love? Come on. I like my coffee. But I did want to just make a note on this whole dopey pandemic thing that it made me feel better after I had a conversation. Maybe it will. And then we'll get right into the Skinwalker Ranch and the Skinwalkers. What is a Skinwalker? The Skinwalker podcast, okay? I was talking with my son, number 2 son, and me, like you, I'm sure, we miss people, we miss family because we're social distancing, at least we should be. And I was talking to my number 2 son, and we weren't so much talking about the pandemic, but we were talking about another problem that I have here, a problem that has seemed to have gone on forever, for 13 months, actually. I'm building the trophy wife a pool, or having it built. I gave it to her for Christmas a couple Christmases ago, okay? This pool is 13 months into its building, and we're not done. As of Monday, the governor has shut down the state, so it looks like no work is going to be done on it for another month. So it's going to be a 14, 15, 16-month project. Who knows how long this pool is going to take to get built, okay? But it's a first world problem. And I told my son that, you know what, in the big scheme of things, if this is the biggest thing I have to worry about, I'm golden because it's a first world problem. And my son, in his infinite wisdom, corrected me. He said, Dad, we live in the first world. It's okay to be upset with a first world problem. We're not second world. We're not third world. We are a first world country. We're going to have first world problems. And I thought, you know what? He's right. We are the first world. We can bitch about the problems caused by the pandemic or by not building the pools. We can complain about those. It's fine to do that. Okay? But we also need to listen to those who know what they're talking about. The doctors, the scientists, and heed their advice. The whole social distancing thing does work. Now, I love a good conspiracy as much as the next guy. In fact, better than most, okay? This isn't one. This ain't a conspiracy, okay? I don't care what Glenn Beck or all the rest of them say. This is not a conspiracy. Government isn't driving this. This is the one case, I think, where government is actually heeding the advice of those who know what they're talking about, the doctors, the scientists, etc., okay? So the attitude I'm trying to take on this, and maybe it would behoove you to do the same. Chill out, wait, and who knows what's going to happen after all this is done. Folks are going to die. Folks are going to get sick. People are going to lose a whole lot of money. But then from the ashes will rise the phoenix. And why do I say that? Because it's always been that way in the past. Why would this be any different? It absolutely will not be any different. Now, after this is done, after it's passed, we find a vaccine, we do this, we do and we're back to life as we remember it, at least as normal as it's going to be, okay, because it will change. But as soon as we're back to normal, then we can talk about, was it a Chinese plot? Should we have shut the country down so much? Was it a Bilderberger, trilateralist, Alex Jones conspiracy? Okay, when we're back to normal, let's go ahead and try to put the pieces of the puzzle back together. But right now, do the right thing, please. Please. Stay at home, social distance, do the right thing, please. Okay, enough of that. Skinwalkers. What are skinwalkers? What is the Skinwalker Ranch? Are they UFOs? Kind of. Are they Bigfoot? Maybe. They're kind of a hybrid between the two, okay? In fact, after several weeks of interviews, the studio's closed to guests, okay? And I wanted to do this. There's no guest, so I had to do a live podcast, just me, and I wanted to go ahead and put this together because this escape, these skinwalkers, I wanted to talk about those. Skinwalkers are UFOs, Bigfoot, ghosts, all rolled into one. In fact, in some respects, skinwalkers cause the others to pale in comparison. Now, first of all, let's start. What is a skinwalker? What's the definition of a skinwalker? Well, the Navajo people, the Ute people, and other Indian tribes in the area, they believe a skinwalker is a bad or harmful witch who can disguise themselves as an animal, a shapeshifter, if you would. Okay, it's hard to find out more information about skinwalkers because the Navajo really won't talk about it to non-Navajos. It's kind of their own culture, and if you're not one of them, they don't like to talk about it. So a lot of this, we're trying to put the pieces together, us non-Navajos, non-Utes, trying to put the pieces together and figure out exactly what these skinwalkers are. I can tell you this. If you look at some of the ancient Navajo and Ute petroglyphs, the skinwalkers are documented on these petroglyphs. So, in other words, if this wasn't real, or at least perceived as something substantial in culture, the native peoples would not have put them on petroglyphs because that's how they told their story. That's how they told their history. That was their history book, okay? In other words, telling a Navajo that a skinwalker is fake is on the same plane as telling a Christian that there's no such things as angels, okay? And I'll explain what I'm trying to say. If you're a Christian person, okay, and someone told you, well, angels are just phony, they're fake. Well, you may take offense to that because, oh, wait a minute. The angel Gabriel came and talked to Mary, told her about the coming of the Christ, etc., etc. There's angels throughout the Bible. Angels are obviously real. Truth of the matter is, there's no way to scientifically prove that angels are real. However, many at least, Christians believe that angels are real. Why? It's in the Bible, okay? You can't prove it, okay? But while you can't prove it, most Christians still believe it. Many Christians with PhDs believe this, okay? So they're not just an ancient moronic people who believe in angels. Educated people do, okay? So if you figure that if a Christian can believe that angels are real, and I'm not saying that they are or not, so I'm not making an argument here, okay? But if an intelligent Christian can say angels are real, why would we criticize a Navajo or Ute person for saying that skinwalkers aren't real? See where I'm coming from on this? Okay. Again, no proof, but that doesn't necessarily mean that skinwalkers don't exist. Okay. And what is a skinwalker? It's something that can shapeshift, that can change its matter. Coyotes can be skinwalkers. Other animals too. Supernatural beings, larger than life beings, maybe like a Bigfoot could be a skinwalker. An animal that you may or may not have ever imagined can be a skinwalker. They can shapeshift into whatever they like. They can shapeshift themselves into orbs, and lots of orbs have been found or seen on the Skinwalker Ranch and in areas like that, or areas up there near northeastern Utah, where the Skinwalker Ranch is located. I mentioned comparing skinwalkers to angels in Christianity. Here's the other interesting fact about skinwalkers is other cultures, in fact, virtually all other cultures have some version of a skinwalker in them. Islamic faith has jinn. They call it the jinn. That's short for genie, okay? You all know about genies and Aladdin and all that. Well, the jinn is like a skinwalker. The Jews have the Shidam. The Buddhists have the Rabishu, the Shidus, the Divas, demons. All cultures have some version of skinwalkers, some version. Now, virtually all cultures have some rendition of a skinwalker. Could all cultures be mistaken? I mean, think about that. The Buddhists and the Navajos never really spoke in ancient times. It's impossible. But they all have some type of being, some type of enmity, some type of phenomenon that mirrors a skinwalker. They all do. If they're not real, how did these cultures all have something that was very similar? Okay. The Skinwalker Ranch. If we're going to talk about what a skinwalker is, the Skinwalker Ranch is a place. Okay. And it's been around for a long time. And it kind of came into pop culture about 20 years ago. Okay. But let's go back a little bit further than that. It was bought by a family called the Sherman family. And actually, it's hard to say if the Shermans are real because people have tried to research the Shermans. They couldn't find a family called Sherman. However, they found another family that was similar, and Sherman is kind of a moniker, an alias, because these folks don't want anything to do with this thing anymore. But Terry and Gwen Sherman and their family, they bought this 500-plus acre ranch near Ballard, Utah. Ballard, Utah, it borders the Ute Indian Reservation up in northeast Utah. It's in northeast Utah, just south of the Ashley National Forest. Ballard actually goes, or Highway 40, it's also called Highway 191, US 191, US 40, goes right through Ballard, Utah. So if you look at a map of northeast Utah, you see where Highway 40 goes through northeast Utah, a little bit north of that. That's where Ballard, Utah is. That's where the Skinwalker Ranch is located, okay? It was also called the Sherman Ranch once upon a time because the Sherman family owned it. Now, as early as the 1950s in pop culture, that whole area around the Skinwalker Ranch has been a hotbed of UFO activity. That's according to the locals who live in the area. In 1994, the Skinwalker Ranch became well known when Terry and Gwen Sherman and their children purchased the property.